What's up, good people, and welcome back here for another recap review show here at Big O Bolt Media of this week's episode of Godfather of Harlem, episode 8, which is available right now. We're a little bit late, and that's okay because it's still right on time, technically. I know y'all like that late night after the episode drop, but we decided to just delay it just a little bit for you all, just to make sure a little bit of technicalities, but it's all good. But I
Am
know
I the
what it is.
technicality? Wait a minute. Am I the technicality here? Because
life
I'm
life
traveling and we're
life
trying to
is
do
the
this.
life is the technicality, sir. Life is the technicality. But this episode is episode 8, Homeland or Death. I'm at home. Lucas must be in Harlem, but it's okay because
Wow. In Harlem, out of all.
we like on-site coverage.
Hey, hey, live to you from Bumpy Johnson's grave. I'm doing this Godfather of Harlem review, Joe.
Listen, you channel the spirit to give the authentic reaction and recap of it. You channeling the essence of Bumpy Johnson and all he's done for Harlem. And don't forget about Stella, the princess of Harlem.
Hey, at this point, I just need to find me some Ducci while I'm out here and make a couple of moves if necessary.
Yeah. I don't know what the price is going on for right now, but
I'm pretty sure that's not what Bumpy was getting them for.
But this episode is a pretty straightforward episode for me. I think if you read the synopsis, that's exactly what you got. And I think there's some other things we can elaborate a little bit on, but I think this is a very straight shooter of an episode here. But we're just going to start off at the top of this episode as we see Malcolm and Bumpy at the bar, and they're watching the news because they're getting a report of what should be a historical day at the UN as Malcolm and Che Guevara are expected to make a speech. This speech not only should be a rally in communism, but it's a complete threat to the United States. Yes. And you can just take that for everyone. I'm not saying I'm picking sides. I'm just delivering the message here. But between the two of them, obviously Malcolm is at this point fearless. He knows what he needs to do. And you have Bumpy, who's just totally against this. And there's a couple of really good commentary coming from between the two of them about perspectives about things. But as every episode in Godfather of Harlem, the opening really does tell a story within its own. So for you, sir, Malcolm and Bumpy at the bar, what do you make of this? And at this point now, I think it's without a doubt to say they're anything less than brothers.
I mean, the way this episode starts off, the most important part is the protection aspect of it. Like, that's the whole point of this meeting is Malcolm feels because of this meeting at the UN that he no longer needs Bumpy's protection. But in giving away Bumpy's protection, Bumpy knows, like, you're risking it all. And the reason he knows it, because everything will happen with Wild Bill and Jose, so he kind of understands the hit that's out on Che and Malcolm here. So this is a conversation between two brothers who one feels I need to protect you at all costs, while the other one is, the technical way to put it is trying to spread their wings and fly here. Like I can't become who I need to become if you're going to protect me from everything humanly possible. Yeah. And Bumpy's on the other side of like, man, I was sworn to protect you and I'll do that at all costs. So it's kind of interesting to see that they use Che as the backdrop to a conversation about one brother allowing another brother to grow up and be out on their own.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what I really enjoyed between the two of them was this line Malcolm said to Bumpy about a man who stops eating is when his mind eats him. I don't know if I've ever heard that, but that has to be the most accurate statement ever. And I think, you know, now in this generation, we understand that this has a lot to do with depression or possibly anxiety, mostly depression. And we should assess right now that Bumpy is completely depressed, that he's lost Mamie.
Yeah. Mamie. I mean, he may have lost his Mamie too, but I'm pretty sure he did lose her in this episode.
But what is your thoughts about the state of Bumpy here, and how it's written all over his face, time and time over and over in this episode? People can tell, but what is your thoughts about this?
Malcolm is his last thing he can hold on to that he can control. Without Mamie there, like with her gone, what's the other purpose of Bumpy? Like, it can't be to be a drug dealer. At this point, he uses the facade of providing for his family to be who he has to be. Now that the family gone, what else is left? To protect Malcolm.
Yeah.
And he's using him as a crutch at this point. As they said at the beginning of the conversation, when he's going through letting Malcolm know that Mamie left, and he's like, oh, don't worry about it. She'll eventually come back. You didn't see that on Bumpy's face, though. Bumpy had complete doubt that would ever happen.
Yeah.
And then he channeled everything into protecting Malcolm because that was the last thing that he could do.
Yeah. Yeah. And Malcolm said, listen, do not let your home collapse around you. That is a message from Malcolm to every man across the world. Make sure you take care of home before you be trying to do all this other stuff out there.
Hey, or the great philosopher Sean J.C. Carter said, nobody wins when a family feuds. And a multitude of other lines that fit the same premise here.
And the both of them had this statement to kind of exchange with one another. Like, listen, did you work your ass off this hard to blow it? And then he said, did you work your own ass off to blow it up for yourself? You know what I mean? Yeah. So there's that. Anyway, we got Wild Bill and Jose battle as Wild Bill explains that you can just go right up to your army surplus store and get you a bazooka straight off the street. And this is perfect for the CIA because of CIA plausible deniability here. And their whole plan is to kill Malcolm and Che together, as he says. Did he say one stone, two commies? Whatever he said, something corny. Yep. But I think what's important here, and whether you want to talk about it now or later on, is Jose. Jose is looking like, and like, Jose's never been menacing in terms of his demeanor. But as I said, and as we said numerous times before, Jose is powerful. He's an asset. And Wild Bill gets that too. I mean, granted, everything that's happening right now with the CIA is by means of Jose's resources. You know, not the bazooka, but all the other guns. Because that's why Jose was kind of like, well, where'd you get this from? Because we don't have this. And he said, well, we just went up to the shop. You know, we went to the corner store, got me a Coke and a bazooka all in the same trip.
Who knew you could buy a bazooka from Radio Shack back in the 60s?
But it is important to see Jose's expressions to all of this as he is puzzled. Like, I'm sure he's thinking like, man, America is a wild fucking place to live, bro. Like you can just do this and understanding the value of artillery and ammunition because that's what all of the war is about. Don't tell nobody that, but that's what the war is about. In case you didn't know.
And I think that's what throws him off more than anything. While he's extremely happy that it would get rid of Che and Malcolm, he's more thrown off that if you can buy this form of artillery just from an army surplus store, kind of what's the purpose that you need me for? Like I thought like my gift, my talent, the thing that separated me is that I can buy arms, but you just told me that anybody could buy them at this point. So what's the purpose of me then?
Yeah, I wonder, and again, this is why I say I don't know if you want to talk about it now or later, but I wonder if Jose feels not so special by the end of this. Yeah. So we'll see. Anyway, back at the Latin Club, we see Jose dancing, Bumpy watching. We get Jose like, oh, what a surprise. And this is just an exchange of saying, like, listen, if you want to protect your friend, advise him not to show up. So they're not playing fair, but as we see, Bumpy is doing whatever he can to get the message through to drop the assassination attempt on Malcolm. And he doesn't care about Che. He just straight up Malcolm. Just by the way, I'm like the type of guy like, listen, they're going to be together. Like save them both. But Bumpy's definitely kind of like, no. This my guy, Malcolm.
Yeah, the whole purpose was to save Malcolm. He could care less about Che. Like if he dies, he dies.
Yeah,
but
basically,
Malcolm is a completely different story for him.
Yeah. So Stella and Joe is being a hothead, wishing he can go to Washington to blow up the headquarters. All because listen, and I say this, and I need to figure out the word here, but I say this as I guess as a disclaimer that what I'm going to say does not represent anything here at Big Old Media. But I can tell you that taxes are very frustrated. So for what Joe is saying right now, I'm sure there's others that echo the same thing saying, man, fuck the IRS. Not as far as going to blow it up, but he's definitely kind of like, He took it to the extreme way. He took it to the only way Joe could do.
Yes.
But what's important here is Stella is showing her worth. This is the first episode Stella hasn't done anything stupid, if you ask me. Y'all can fact check us, get us in the comment.
You talk about right episode, she does nothing stupid. Because she does horrible things later on in this episode that are absolutely stupid.
Oh, I mean, they're horrible. She's never not going to be a horrible person, but like her showing and explaining how to kind of work the system, how to beat the IRS, you know, how to make the IRS work for you and whatnot, and explaining about opening businesses and tax credit. What Stella is doing is absolutely genius, because it's genius because she didn't create this, but she learned the lessons from the families, from her father, and passing it on. And why this is genius and why she's not looking at it in the granular scope, this is a difference between Italians and Black people. This is generational wealth, telling them how do we keep our money, our assets, our tax credits all in this circle here. On and on and on and on and on. Hipping game to game to game. We don't have time to talk about what we do, so I'm just going to leave it at that. But I will say that what Stella's doing is not only attractive to Joe, because Joe is not hip to game. So he's looking at her like, wow, like, I'm not hip. And I think we all at a time in our life has met a significant person who has put us on to game that just opened our eyes out about whatever it may be. And I think this is what Joe is getting with Stella. Joe is very confident in all the things he do, but he's completely frustrated that he does not know how to handle his own finances. And Stella comes in, lets him know what it is, says that brilliant braiding of yours, gives her a kiss on the forehead, and then immediately goes back into Joe mode by saying, Stella says, well, you know, I learned this from my dad. And Joe was thinking like, well, that's the name I needed to hear. Your dad, huh? So could you tell me what his next move is going to be? And as they don't know, the big question is how and when might he come for Joe again? What did you think about the dynamic between the two of them after all these episodes? Now they're finally playing nice with each other. But what do you think of it?
I mean, I remember telling you a couple episodes ago that eventually she would fall for Joe. And that's all we see here. Like,
I didn't disagree.
It was obvious that we're going to go down this route with Stella and Joe, but she is a horrible person. She's absolutely horrible here. Like, out of everything she did here, we see that it's just for attraction purposes that she's even helping out Joe here. Because other than that, what would be the purpose? He ain't gonna let you go. You rejected the trip to Paris, the one that you've been begging to go to for this entire season. And all of a sudden now you're helping with his books when you know this is against the wishes of your father. So what's the point? Like this was the beginning of new hatred for Stella as a character. I already didn't like her, but her actions here and when we get to the rest of this episode just lead you to say, man, she is a horrible person. I can't even say she's singly focused on her goals. Her goals went away. I don't know what the hell she's doing. But here, I mean, it's great that she gives Joe the information, but you can see the difference between the two. Joe gets the news. It's great. You bring up a name, Joe immediately goes back to his focus. I need to find a way for your father not to kill me. So if you can find out any plans that are going to help me so he doesn't kill me, please let me know.
Yeah. We're going to see. Going to Confessions now, not the Usher album. We have Olympia going in to make a confession to Louis or Uncle Louis or Lou, whatever you want to be.
Or Father Louis.
Father Louis.
However you want to call him.
But Olympia is one character I've never trusted. She goes in there and is like, I need your help. Need you to straighten out the situation. I mean, at this point now, and like looking back when I first watched, I didn't know. I knew she was pleading, but I didn't know she was convincing. She was convincing Louis how bad of a person Joe is. We already knew. But how bad of a person that Stella is, and she is completely manipulated. She's also working with Joe. She's trying to completely destroy not only their family, but the families. And she is turning everybody, including Chin, She's trying to compromise everything, including everything that Chin has built. And Olympia is looking to not allow this. As you said, Joe is destroying the families and all this other stuff. And then she tells him with the most tactical way to come at anybody within the ministry is, what would Jesus do? And that's all Louis needed. And Louis decided to really risk his. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it in a second because it comes up.
So safety, a multitude of things he decided that risking would be best to help Olympia out here.
Yeah. And I guess I'm just thinking like, did he have enough to believe her? But I guess on the contrary, it's much like Stella and him conversations, like he didn't have any reason not to believe her.
And we got to always remember when Olympia hit the key part when she said that Stella's being manipulated by Joe. You got to remember, Stella, if you don't remember from season 1, Stella was on medication because of multiple things. So to Louis, his niece can be easily manipulated.
Fair.
So yeah. she used that to help trick him into helping her.
Yeah. So we got the meeting of Che Guevara. Who did you think we was going to see? Oh, wait, we already did see him.
No.
Wait, is this the first time we've seen him?
This is the first time you've seen him.
Yeah. I'm thinking like, wait a minute. I know there was something about this. Yeah, so this is the first. Did you think we were going to get an actor here?
No.
I didn't either. This is why the show is fantastic because it literally goes all the way with it. But anyway, the meeting with Che. Oh, this just reminded me. Okay, so this is the meeting with Bumpy, Che, Malcolm X, and Omar. If I'm not mistaken, this is the heavily rumored meeting that some said happened. Yeah, some said happened, some said didn't happen.
Yeah, this is the meeting where it's in history, it can't be proven it didn't happen, but people who knew about the meeting say this meeting actually took place.
This show crazy. Yeah. But anywho, yeah. And then Bumpy lays it out. Says, I got warning, I got high intel. The CIA is looking to assassinate you both. And Jay asked a really good question. Because for him, he doesn't understand the alphabet boys. But he says, well, they've never tried to hide it before. Why are they hiding now? And Omar comes in and said, because you're on American soil. Game's a little bit different here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's dope to see Omar contribute in a way that makes sense and not just standing there. But I don't think there's anything to make of this besides Bumpy giving a warning saying, listen, this ain't it.
Yeah. This you're not home anymore.
Yeah.
Oh, you're not in Kansas anymore, Dorothy. Of course they're gonna try to kill you. And they're not gonna hide it because, well, let me phrase that. They're not gonna be out in the open about it because one, you're an American soil, two, they're attempting to kill an American citizen with you. Like, you know what? Because if it was the other alphabet, it would be just an arrest warrant. They would arrest Che on sight. They would arrest Malcolm on sight. But with the CIA, you're a threat to them. You got to go.
Yeah. Yep. So we have Mamie and Lily, the now widow of Archie. And they're just getting in there. First of all, I don't even know how much you want to talk about this scene because Lily is delusional.
It's the next scene between them two that's more important.
For sure. Yeah. So, I was going to say, for the first meeting, this is this is Lily clearly grieving, but angry, and letting Mamie know, like, stay away from Bumpy. He's a criminal. She's still grieving over Archie, obviously. And she also said that she didn't realize that her husband was in criminal activity and also blames Bumpy for it. And so Mamie is kind of looking like, okay, and I think she's processing because she's also in a precarious situation. Like, this is her friend who lost her husband, who her husband has something to do with it. She just broke up with her husband.
Exactly.
A lot of emotions going on here for her, but we'll talk about the second part in a second. Malcolm working on his autobiography. I know you read it.
I have.
Right. So in this book, if you haven't read it, talks about his mother, his past, and they say his life, time of being a hustler. And then he decides that he says, you know what? I want to write another book. I've been writing notes in this diary here, but I think I want to write another book. I may be running out of time. And this chapter is about Bumpy Johnson. that he said that for the white people that fear Malcolm and said himself, they should be also fearing Bumpy. Did you ever know that there was? First of all, this book never had came out. I do not recall there being a book where he's.
Well, this flows two ways here. One, the book never came out. Two, this is why they put that disclaimer at the front of the show when they say this is based on true events. I don't think this. I would say from the history perspective, just to get that out of the way before we talk about the actual scene, from the history, I don't think this ever happened.
Okay.
I don't think this was ever something even thought about by Malcolm to do.
Yeah.
Because one, it would paint him in a place where he couldn't get out of. You can't write, no matter how good, I'm stammering my words here. We've talked about this more than enough. You can't be a person like Bumpy Johnson. No matter how much good you do in your community, you can never be looked at as a good person.
Which is
humanly impossible.
Which is what his writer was saying, essentially.
Yes, and the writer was Malcolm.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No. I was gonna say, and that's what he came at with him for the first part. The writer was kind of like, no, it's not gonna work.
And then Malcolm tried to hit him with a different angle of it. His circumstances led him to this. But again, we know nowadays when people say that, the first thing you say is, well, there's multiple people in those circumstances. What made yours so different here? Not only that, I think for people who, it's a great aspect to put this in a show, because what we're not getting from the show is the deep history of Bumpy Johnson.
Yeah.
Anybody who's ever saw the movie Hoodlum should understand why this chapter would make no sense. That's all you got to do. If you need to know more about Bumpy Johnson, who Lawrence Fishburne plays him in Hoodlum, and you see the things he does then, you will understand why this chapter would never exist for Malcolm. But it's good for the show because it helps show the love and compassion he has for his brother.
Yeah.
He wants his brother to be viewed the exact same way he's viewed. Yeah. At all costs, he's willing to do it too. Yeah. Like if I have to explain to everybody why my brother's a good man and why, even though he does these horrible things, that he's still good. He's good-hearted. He's extremely dangerous to the world because if he ever succeeds, X, Y, and Z will happen. Yeah. Like that's what he wants to push forward for Bumpy here. And this is just the next chapter of the brothers in the situation. Because it's all a road of the brothers here in this episode. And this is just the next part of it. And this is the complete love part of it between them two.
Yeah, it's protection in different ways here. I mean, when you Malcolm is trying to protect his image.
Yep.
And Bumpy is trying to protect Malcolm physically. And again, this is why I call them brothers, because I mean, like, this is sort of the dynamic that you see two brothers with each other. You know, listen, I'm trying to think of, do we have a show? I guess we could talk about BMF really quick. I think we talk about Terry and Meech. Listen, nobody's going to fight my brother. You know, they went on good terms. This episode where Terry was getting stomped a little bit and Meech came in there and was like, nah, it's not going down like that. You know?
Even BMF is not the best comparison. The best comparison possible that people in this genre of show will realize is Ghost and Tommy. I can try to do whatever I want to my brother. I will not allow another single soul to do anything to him.
Yeah, that's a good one.
But also, just notice the correlation that Malcolm is talking to this writer, telling the writer, even though Bumpy's done all this bad stuff, all this bad.
Okay, Tyson.
all this bad stuff. All you got to do is look at the correlation that technically Malcolm is talking about Bumpy in the exact same way that painter painted Bumpy, and we saw Bumpy's reaction to that painting.
Yeah, fair enough. That's a good point. We get Bumpy and Mamie because Bumpy comes as she agreed to let him come, dropping off flowers for Lily. As he said, thank you for agreeing to meet me. But he said, listen, I ain't come to talk about Archie, our past, or anything of that. I do need a favor here. I need you to know that they are trying to assassinate Malcolm. Can you do something? Please call Adam. Adam's in Washington. Figure it out. Why I would plead for you to come back home. I know it wouldn't work. And then he leaves and says, I love you. And that just leaves Mamie to kind of look to decide, one, did she believe him? clearly she still loves him. She always is going to love him and fall for him. But also there's something more important than all of that. And that's purpose for her. I think that when she is given a task, she's all the way 1,000% in, and it's no different from all the different things that she struggled with last season, the beginning of this season, in terms of social injustice and her finding success. She will, to no end, try to achieve her goal. And I think with this purpose, this task, she already knew what she needed to do. It was bigger than Bumpy. And I also think that she understands what Bumpy means to what Malcolm means to Bumpy. I think she also may be aware that Malcolm is more important than her at times to Bumpy. And I think and I think she's so cool. I think she's okay with that, because I think she also idolizes Malcolm in a way for what he does. So it's a very safe relationship that the three of them have,
Yeah.
So you know what? We kind of got cheated of scenes of Malcolm and Mamie this season. Did we have any? Maybe one?
You got to keep in mind the most important aspect of any type of relationship between Malcolm and Mamie. Mamie would possibly follow the leadings and the teachings of Martin way more than Malcolm.
Well, I mean, yeah,
way more. Not because Malcolm is radical, but you can keep in mind she's a church-going woman. She's like that. Yeah, that's why her and Powell are so. Yeah, that's why Powell and her are so close together.
Yeah,
like he understands milk. Powell understood milking the church, and Mamie was a good portion of why he felt he can do that.
Yeah,
but her and Malcolm, I think it's a respect there for Malcolm and what Malcolm wants to do, what Malcolm loves to do for the community. But the way they frame Mamie in this show, the framing would tell me way more Martin than Malcolm.
Yeah, absolutely, totally agree. We get the families meeting. Father Louis comes in, which is everybody's so happy. Everybody's like, I feel so safe that you're here and whatnot. But he brings a message on behalf of Chin, who is his brother, if you didn't know. And he just says, I wish to prevent violence, which obviously, if anybody at that table believed that this was Chin's statement, you must be boo-boo the fool. Chin saying cease the violence. Yeah, I get Chin wanting to make statements in order to prevent unnecessary casualties, because he's done it in the past, only if it benefits him. So like if he wants to prevent violence, then I'm thinking like, what's the end game here? And obviously from talking about Joe and he's going at Joe, obviously conveying the messages of Olympia, and just says, listen, stop the rumors, keep Chin in prayers. He may be released soon, very soon. But he said, but anyway, but before I go, here's this end credit scene of this movie. Also, Chin says he's lost all faith in Joe, and he no longer has any agreement with him. All right, peace. Peace and blessings. I'm out. I love this scene because it shows how big of a coward Louis is, because Louis had tried to lift the morale up, tried to patch the family, and then, as Joe perfectly described, he dropped a hand grenade on the families, and what would happen next, who knows? But it's Joe we're talking about here, so Joe's gonna figure it out. But I'm
not gonna say Louis is a coward. I'm gonna say Louis understands who his brother is, even if he disagrees with the actions his brother will take.
Yeah.
So this is just him like, okay, look, I'm just gonna let y'all know. I pray for you all. I hope you all have a blessed day. Yeah. Jesus loves you. By the way, Chin said, fuck Joe. I'm going to murder this dude when I get out. Y'all deal with that on your own.
Yeah. Fuck it. Crazy. So Joe back at the shop, pissed, as typical, talking to Stella. And they come up with the plan was that, listen, like, Stella said, I know Olympia put him up to this, but we need to convince Louis that Stella is lying. And obviously Joe has no bit of strategy besides killing somebody, and Stella says, nah, that's the only person that was there for me, only person I trust. You can't hurt Louis, and so we got to come up with another plan. And
here's the odd thing here, right? Her thought process wasn't, this is my uncle, why would that be okay for you to kill him? It's she focused his possible demise on her. Well, he's the only one that's always been there for me. So I need him to be there. How about that's your uncle and he shouldn't be killed for cleaning up a mess that you
created.
That you created. Not only that, it should also be maybe it's not right to kill him, because if you think my father's going to stop then, at that point, at all costs, he's going to murder you and everybody in your family if you touch his brother.
Yeah. There you go. So we now get Mamie in Adam's office, and we just get exactly what we all knew. She tried to reach Adam. Adam's in Washington. He made calls, but no police detail, no police security. No one is messing with Malcolm because of what he's done in Africa. That is, as they said, it's nothing but typical excuses. There's nothing they can do to help Adam. And I think that, as he said, that everyone's afraid of a world of equality here. And that definitely sparked some thoughts in Mamie's head here. Bumpy goes to his daughter, Elise. Same thing. Convinced Malcolm not to speak. As she said, listen, Malcolm's tired of running, and he's expecting to die. So there's nothing we can do. And as he said, well, be safe, at least, essentially. And she's just kind of like, man, I'm out here by whatever happens. I don't think she wants to die, but I think she's kind of just like, well, I'm going to support him regardless. So again, this is all Bumpy and Mamie, everybody trying to prevent this whole thing from happening. So Wild Bill and Jose now talks about the entire plans for the assassination, even the part of staging the protest as a distraction. I just wanted to add that because for the conspiracy theorists out there that be saying that those things be happening, and people be like, "Why would it?" Listen, I'm gonna say this now, also with a disclaimer. There's a particular person that I do not agree with, that I don't think is credible. But this person definitely said that a particular mass shooting was not real, and he got sued for a ton of money because of that. And whatever you think of that, I'm not saying what I'm thinking. I'm just saying that understand that when you have a narrative that the CIA stages protests, planting distractions for the ultimate thing that happened. And when people say that online as a conspiracy theory, it ain't so far-fetched when the show starts to go down that route and saying that, like, those things kind of happen. I never took it into consideration, but this one definitely had me scratching my head a little bit.
I think in the 60s, we understood this type of stuff happened. Now, probably not as much because there's no need for it. I can cause these issues just by having Tucker Carlson go on television and say some shit you disagree with. So I no longer need the protest route of it all. But yeah, back then that was the way to do it. You have to cover it up somehow, some way. And the best way to cover it up is by framing a protest around them. Yeah. Which is weird because also people who had no issue protesting them. They're communists. Growing up, people who didn't know exactly what communist was, you heard the phrase like "die commies" and stuff of this nature. We've always heard it, even if you didn't understand what that meant fully. Yeah. So you got to understand, if you heard it, it's because it was a group of people who did not like it. You think it's hard to get a protest to happen? Hey, they're going to be here. I need enough people who disagree with them to be in this one place at one time.
Yep.
And that's why I said what I said when you started, and I mentioned a certain group and certain amount of protests that happened in cities. And I want y'all to see the distraction of when those protests happen in cities and what happened in other cities to fully understand it's a way to sidetrack you.
Fair enough. Y'all read between the lines. I picked up on it. Bumpy and the crew now trying to figure out how they're going to hit Malcolm. So now they're going to a more strategical matter. And they said, Pettigrew, I need you to go out and scout locations and whatnot. And Dale, I need you to go send a message to Wild Bill and to do some recon there.
Yeah.
And then before that even wraps up, Dale looks at Bumpy and said, hey man, you got something on your mind? Obviously, well, he's showing face. And this is just him being bothered that he may lose his friend. He said, I'm not a religious person, but pray for Malcolm. So it just shows you just how dire it is, but yet how much Malcolm means to Bumpy.
Yeah.
So Malcolm, now speaking about Bumpy and now what should be putting forth like the idea of the next book and whatnot. So speaking about
Yeah.
Malcolm and the type of man he is, and he's a king in a white man's world, and he can change the world. And he also says like he's still a project that he's working on. And honestly, beyond going like into this all this is in pro wrestling. We call this putting somebody over, and this is Malcolm putting over Bumpy. And trying to justify the reasons he needs to do this novel, while his writer is saying no at this point. But again, he also was talking about a future, and honestly, this shows you why Malcolm X and Martin Luther King were always compared to one another, because they both talked about a future of equality. They just had different routes in doing so. So in other words, this was Malcolm "I Have a Dream" speech right here, just also like featuring Future and Bumpy, because
I have a dream. This was Malcolm's "I Have a Dream" speech, though. That is basically so disrespectful.
That was. I'll take that back. That was no, but I mean no. This is the construction of Malcolm's "I Have a Dream." When he's talking about. That's, like
that's different. Okay.
Yeah. No, this is not the execution. This is but honestly though, it is interesting to think about that. Like, I will not say what I know, but I do know as much as a threat that Martin's "I Have a Dream" speech was. I think you can equate that to what's happening here with this speech that they don't want Malcolm to do at the UN right now.
I would say it would be a little different just because of one you can always throw away as two communists having a conversation you highly disagree about, and also, because they're communists.
Also, two different the two different alphabet boys was after them. CIA was after
no. CIA was, and FBI was after both of them.
Okay.
Yeah, both of them were threatened by the same organization here, and it's because it was always viewed as just the difference of how they went about it. Like if Malcolm gives that speech, his speech is way more about empowering Black, colored, disenfranchised people to stand up on their own and fight against the people who fight, who are holding them back and holding them down. Malcolm's thing was to talk to the people who actually had the power and tell them, this is why you should give it up for everyone to be in peace, for everyone to be equal. The last thing they want is for people to revolt against them and try to stop them. And they damn sure don't want someone preaching that maybe if you gave up some of your power, you gave up some of your control, and you helped us out, and all of us lived in harmony, that would be a peaceful thing. Nah. Both of them are too big of threats. It's just two separate messages doing it.
Yeah. Fair. Yep. So we got more confessions, not Usher, with Louis, and Stella comes in and Stella comes in like, what are you doing? First of all, Stella's asking Louis, like, what are you doing? And Louis like, what are you doing here? And this is just her trying to discredit Olympia. And Louis comes at him like, comes at her like, why are you trying to destroy the family? And at the end of it, Louis believes that, well, Stella is possessed by the devil, so get out of here. He's taking over your soul, get out of here. And Stella just kind of calmly walks out and says, I'm going to pray for you and whatnot. So,
and threatens him about what Joe will do to him.
Yeah.
Like, at that point, I don't know how she thought she would get through to Louis by basically saying, Joe wants to hurt you, and if you don't do this, Joe will hurt you.
Yeah,
like it made no sense. It was so counterproductive, but it was so Stella.
It was very much Stella. So Dale goes to see Wild Bill, which I thought was completely risky, but I guess they have an agreement where it's not so much. But anyway, he goes in and lets him know, like, listen, you have an ally with me because he doesn't like Malcolm, because as a true patriot of this world, any American who does not help, who doesn't help, who thinks they're helping doesn't, and typically fucks it up, who's trying to make a better America. So in other words, in the 2022 version of this statement, any American who wants to make America great again typically ends up doing nothing but fucking it up. Yeah. That is that's a 2023. No, it's the New Testament version of Dale the Great. as he as he looks to continue his prophecy going forward. But Wild Bill has Dale's whole resume, so see, he walking in like I don't know who you are. But anyways, as I'm glad this played the way out it did. He says, "Listen, I don't care how much you like do
you dislike Malcolm.
Malcolm. This is the same thing that he had. Like it's the same tactic Wild Bill had before about like I don't know if you're telling the truth or not. I don't know if you're a rat or not." But I weigh my pros and cons here, and I know that you're more loyal to Bumpy than anything. So with that being said, you might want to roll out as Dale reminded him that Bumpy still knows about Operation Mongoose, which is it's a thing. It's a really big thing.
And then Wild Bill told him, doesn't matter. I don't care what he knows.
Yeah.
It's not nearly as big of a threat as Malcolm and Che in his speech. Yeah. I think that was the most important part of this scene.
Yeah.
Because it lets you know that technically at this point, Wild Bill doesn't think Bumpy's little story no longer has leverage over him.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, Dale comes to update Bumpy. I was like, man, Wild Bill's one fat crazy motherfucker. He talks about the artillery box, the M20, which is the rocket launcher, long range weapon. So Dale is giving his military expertise as to what's happening. They agree that it's smart. He was able to identify the fruit truck. So he says, like, listen, this is what I want to do. He says, I need you to scout the long distance areas. They got all the measurements and whatnot. And he says, I'm going to cancel Malcolm's schedule for the day. Mamie and Lillian, part 2 here. And this was the rematch that we all have been anticipating.
Yes.
So Lillian has a private detective, and she hired a private detective to figure out who murdered Archie. And this, as Mamie says, will put Bumpy in jeopardy. Yes, my husband Bumpy in jeopardy. And Archie wasn't clean. Lillian, stop the cat. You already know what it was. Like, come on now. And Mamie not only says, listen, you bet your ass I'm on Bumpy's side. Call this man off, or I'm going to rip your wig off and drag you down whatever road that she says. First of all, 2 questions. Were you surprised here? And what did you think about the events here? Absolutely not surprised, right? But what did you think about the exchange of words between these
everything is fine with Mamie and you talking about Bumpy up until she feels you become a threat to Bumpy. When you become a threat to Bumpy, she's going to eliminate the threat to Bumpy. And that's what this is. And it was Lillian, just in all honesty, I think Mamie had got to the point of being tired, is that you're framing Archie as this completely innocent man.
Yeah.
He wasn't. He was a criminal. He was dirty. And unfortunately, while he was wrongfully executed, he got himself involved in business with Bumpy. Guess what? I think Mamie said at one point in time, he understood the risk of what he was doing.
Yeah.
Like, so all of this, I'm going to hire a private detective to find out who killed him and all that. You're trying to open up way too many closets here. You don't know the skeletons that are behind them.
Yeah.
And if you are going to become a threat to Bumpy, maybe just like, look here, don't make me hurt you.
Yeah.
Because that whole pull your wig off and drag you down, was it Fulton? Did she say Fulton?
Yeah.
I don't know. Like it was a serious thing of maybe just saying, hey, leave it be. Yeah. It's happened already.
Yeah.
In all honesty, at this point, it's kind of what a lot of people are told when the loved one dies under suspicious circumstances or street related. What do you think you're going to get out of it if you find out who actually did it?
Exactly.
Do you think it's going to stop there? Normally, it wouldn't stop there.
Exactly. So Joe and the boys, they beat up Louie. That's the end of that. Wild Bill does more testing.
How you just gonna? It's not even just the beating up Louie that's important here. Always remember, while he beat up Louie looked in the car, and who did Louie see? With Joe, because he saw Stella in that car. Mm-hmm. Who do you think Louie's going to go back and tell that this happened, and then who was with who?
Yeah,
that's going to get back to Chin.
Yeah,
and it's going to cause an even bigger problem.
Yeah,
because now it actually frames what Olympia said as being truthful.
Yeah,
which is that she's under Joe's control now.
Yeah, Yep. So while Bill's doing more testing and the plans, telling the crew what needs to be done, Jose's watching. And then at the end of this is where Wild Bill was like, "Yo, man, you have still some great guys you have there." Anyway, they're easy to clean. Wild Bill was never going to lead them alive, and Jose is looking like, "Wait, what? That wasn't the plan. They got compromised or whatever, whatever." He said, "Nah, I thought you knew." And this is again Jose just kind of just evaluating what's happening here and just kind of in disbelief. But he also didn't do anything to save his folks. Because at one point I thought he was gonna run out to that food truck and let them know, like, "Hey, bro, you know."
Yeah, no.
And the guys are talking about family and whatnot, and it's you know, it's the CIA. Everyone's dispensable, and I think that Jose kind of looks around like, as you said earlier, well, what's my purpose here?
Castro's still alive. You thought he was going to warn them? No. If they die, they die. Like in the end, Jose was not happy about it, as you can tell by his reaction to it.
Yeah.
But also, you went to CIA. Why did you think loose ends would be left?
He thought it was going to go like, oh, if it doesn't go right, then it will. But if not, then yeah, I don't know. So Jose getting a lesson in. I guess Jose's getting a lesson that like he tried to also give Bumpy to the extent of you don't know how these guys will go, and well, couple of your own team, my brother.
Yes.
Yeah. So, anywho, Bumpy and Malcolm, they have the confrontation out in the front. Bumpy is letting her, you're not going away. Pulls a gun out on them. Malcolm is definitely like, really? But they go back in the house and they watch Che and the whole news telecom of what's happening for the speech. They also are mentioning Malcolm should show up, but he hasn't been shown yet. Malcolm is definitely pissed. He wants to be there. Dale and Pettigrew are looking to figure out where the assassinators are at. Che and his crew are coming in. We're getting and that's not stock footage. I don't know. It's definitely not stock footage. But they just, it's just black and white, and they go over. You see the protesters and some going in. He makes his speech, and so on. And with that, Malcolm's pissed, but also by Che not being killed. Malcolm is like, well, this is all for nothing. Tells Bumpy and his folks to get out. But at the same time, we do know that Pettigrew and Dale stopped the assassination. Yeah. Anywho, so there's going to be a conversation about what happened last. But I think we'll talk about it one quick second. But Mamie's black, and she basically says that I can't be without you. It's just that simple. Therefore, there's nothing for us to say. It's just that simple. She loves her man, and she can't do life without him. But Malcolm is pissed. He doesn't want to do the second book. He rips it up. He says that he's done with Bumpy. He's mad because he wasn't able to be at the biggest moment of his career, a big moment of his life, but he doesn't realize that Bumpy had just saved him. He doesn't know that Bumpy, this man, protected him. And I think now, because Bumpy did not feel the gratitude for what he's done, and now Malcolm feels like he missed his big opportunity, they won't even have the conversation of, we saved you.
Oh,
it won't be necessary.
I don't think that conversation was ever going to take place. I mean, right when Malcolm kicked him out, Malcolm said, and we're done.
Yeah.
And Malcolm meant it. Like, that was it. Because, see, Bumpy was too concerned with saving someone's life who was prepared to die for their cause.
Yeah.
You can't do that. Like, in the end, I think Malcolm, at this moment on the show, Malcolm feels he'd have got way more exposure, way more attention. His message would have been even stronger.
Yeah.
If during that conference, him and Che would have been blown up, you'd have made martyrs out of both of them too. The message would have gotten out to more people. Bumpy's just focused on saving the man when Malcolm has never cared about himself.
Yeah.
It's the message that's the most important thing.
And I don't think he said it, but I mean, we all know when somebody dies, they're typically more glorified than they were alive. And you can think about some of the most iconic folks in the Harlem Renaissance, some of the biggest activists. And you can kind of evaluate, do we appreciate certain people who are
more
alive still
equipping.
doing the work outside of the folks who died that did the work. It's a thing that I don't think maybe Malcolm X was aware of that, but I also think it had a lot to do with like his spiritual guidance and him accepting that this was what he was supposed to do, realizing that he did get assassinated, and understanding that absolutely, whether it happened at this moment or later on, it still made him exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, all we got to do is, and we can end it right here because this is going to be a horrible analogy to some people. How would you have viewed Jesse Jackson if he died?
I was going to avoid it. I was going to talk about Jesse, and I was going to talk about Reverend Al Sharpton.
Yeah. How would you have viewed them if during that moment,
legendary
pivotal years, they would have passed away? Besides the people you see now, because the longer you live, it's equivalent to an unfortunate sports athlete. The longer you live, the longer you go on, the more I dissect you. And the more I dissect you, the more problems I find out about you that I don't like. We hear about the things that are out about Malcolm and Martin and things that are now coming to light that possibly happened when they were alive, but it's still swept under the rug because when they passed, it wasn't something you brought up. But just imagine if they had to live in this time period and everything comes up. It would cause so many problems.
Yeah. I could say some other stuff, but we're going to end the show right here because we got a lot of other things to do today, folks. Y'all can get in the comments, let us know your thoughts about this episode.
Lots of other things.
Let us know your thoughts about this episode. And very short and sweet. We'll see y'all back next week for more Godfather of Harlem. Thank y'all for checking out this review and recap show.